Victor Maddox didn't expect to be doing CPR in the middle of a Whole Foods parking lot, while his 7-year-old daughter clutched her stuffed rabbit and asked if the lady was going to die. "Call for help, Jules," he said, his voice tight with panic, sweat beading on his forehead as he pressed down on the woman's chest. "Now, go." Juliet didn't hesitate. She bolted toward the store entrance, screaming for help as Victor kept going, chest compressions steady and desperate. The woman beneath him, mid-30s, dressed in a cream blazer and heels too fancy for grocery shopping, was turning pale. Her breathing had stopped almost a full minute ago. Victor had no idea who she was. All he knew was that she dropped her phone, staggered against a car, and collapsed before he could reach her. And something in him, maybe the part that had been a firefighter before the layoffs, before everything went to hell, snapped into action. Sirens blared in the distance. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Don't you die on me." 3 days later, Victor stood outside the hospital room, his hands shoved into the pockets of his worn jeans. Juliet sat in the plastic chair beside him, munching on a granola bar he'd snagged from the vending machine. She was calm now, but her eyes kept darting toward the door. "You sure she's okay now?" Juliet asked in a whisper. Victor nodded. "Yeah, baby, doctor said she's stable. They just want to keep her one more night." He didn't know why he'd come back. Maybe it was the way her fingers twitched when the paramedics took her. Or maybe it was Juliet asking him if they'd ever see the fancy lady again. He'd left his number with the nurses, just in case. He hadn't expected a personal call from her assistant, asking if he could stop by. The door opened. A nurse peeked out. "She's awake. She wants to see you." Victor cleared his throat. "Come on, Jules, let's go say hi." Inside, the room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. The woman sat propped up in bed, her dark hair pulled back now, face pale but composed. Her eyes landed on Juliet first, then lifted to Victor. "You're the man who saved my life," she said. Victor gave her a grateful smile. "Yeah, lucky I happened to be there." She didn't smile back. She looked at him like she was trying to figure him out. "I remember your voice. You were calm." "You told me not to give up," he shrugged, feeling awkward. "I've had some training, used to be a firefighter." Juliet stepped forward. "We didn't get your name." The woman's expression softened. "I'm Juliana Blake." Victor blinked. That name. He'd seen it on a billboard downtown Blake Enterprises. Tech, real estate, fashion, everywhere. He looked back at the woman. "Wait, you're Juliana Blake, as in, the billionaire?" She gave a small nod. "Guilty?" Victor let out a breath, suddenly feeling very aware of his tattered boots and the fact that his daughter's hair was still in the loose, frizzy ponytail he'd put together this morning with zero skill. "I'm Victor. Victor Maddox." "This is my daughter, Juliet." Juliana smiled at Juliet, who beamed back. "You're very brave," she said to her. "Your shouting probably saved me just as much as your dad's CPR did." Juliet looked proud, but Victor cleared his throat. "We were just doing what anyone would have done." "No," Juliana said, her voice quiet. "Most people wouldn't have done what you did." She looked at him again like she was trying to memorize his face. "Would you?" "Sit," she asked, patting the chair beside the bed. He hesitated, then sat. Juliet climbed up into his lap. Juliana's gaze flickered between them. "You're a single dad?" Victor nodded. "Yeah, her mom left when she was a baby." "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "We're doing okay, are you?" she asked, and something in her tone made him pause. Their eyes met. For a second, everything else, the hospital, the machines, the weirdness of the moment, just faded. He was the one who looked away first. A week later, Victor's world turned upside down again, this time in the middle of his shift at the auto shop. "She's here," Marcus, his boss, barked from the office doorway. "Some lady in a black car asking for you." Victor wiped his hands on a rag and stepped outside. She was standing beside a black Bentley, wearing sunglasses and a powder blue coat that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Juliana Blake, in front of his greasy garage. "Hi," she said with a small smile as he approached. "I hope this isn't weird. I wanted to see you again." Victor blinked. "You came to a body shop in Southside to see me." She took off her sunglasses. "You saved my life." "I figured I owed you at least one lunch. I'm working." "I already cleared it with your boss. He said you could take the rest of the day off." Victor turned toward the garage windows. Marcus gave him a thumbs up and disappeared back inside. He looked back at Juliana. You really don't take no for an answer, do you? Her smile widened. Not usually. Victor sighed, tossed the rag onto his workbench, and looked down at his stained shirt. I'm not exactly dressed for anywhere fancy. I don't care. He followed her to the car, his heart thudding a little harder than it should have. This felt like a dream. A strange, surreal dream where a billionaire showed up at his job and asked him to lunch. Inside the car, the seats were butter-soft leather. She didn't have a driver. She drove herself. Where are we going? He asked. You'll see. She took him to a rooftop restaurant he'd only ever seen in magazines. The kind with velvet curtains, gold-plated silverware, and a view of the skyline that made your breath catch. He felt out of place the second they walked in, but Juliana didn't treat him like he didn't belong. She laughed at his jokes, asked about Juliet, wanted to know everything about his life. Why are you really here? Victor asked finally when the waiter walked away with their dessert plates. Juliana's smile faded just a little. Because something about you won't leave me alone, he frowned. What do you mean? I've been surrounded by people who want something from me my whole life. But you didn't see a billionaire, you just saw someone who needed help, and you didn't hesitate. I didn't do it for attention or I know, she said, her voice soft. That's exactly why you're different. Victor looked at her across the table, this woman who shouldn't have anything in common with him, and yet, it didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt real, and it scared the hell out of him. You think this makes sense? He asked. You and me. I don't care if it makes sense, she said. I care that I haven't stopped thinking about you since you knelt beside me in that parking lot. Victor leaned back in his chair, staring at her, Juliana Blake. And for the first time in a long time, he wondered if something bigger than luck had brought them together. Victor paced the sidewalk outside the tutoring center, glancing at his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The fall wind had picked up, tugging at the collar of his jacket while leaves scraped across the pavement. Behind the glass window, Juliet sat at a round table with her tutor, bent over a workbook, pencil gripped in her hand. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth. He should have been focused on her, on dinner, on the overdue energy bill waiting in his mailbox at home, but his thoughts kept circling back to Juliana. 2 days had passed since that rooftop lunch. He'd expected that to be it, some spontaneous act of gratitude from a woman who lived in a world he barely understood. But that night, she'd called. Not her assistant, her. Asking if Juliet had liked the cookies she'd sent, telling him she'd cleared her schedule just to hear his voice. And now, she'd invited them both to a charity gala, not just invited, insisted. She wants us to go, Juliet asked from the backseat as they drove home later. To a real party, Victor tapped his fingers against the steering wheel. It's not really our kind of thing, kiddo. Juliet leaned forward, her eyes wide. Do we have to wear costumes? No, grown-up fancy, not Halloween fancy. Like Cinderella, Victor snorted. More like tuxedos and high heels, I guess. Juliet sat back with a dreamy sigh. I bet she has a dress that sparkles. Victor didn't answer, because he had no idea what he was doing. He didn't own a tux. Juliet's nicest shoes had Velcro straps. And yet, when he'd told Juliana he wasn't sure it was a good idea, she'd said something that stuck with him. Don't worry about fitting in, Victor. Worry about showing up. Now, standing in front of his bedroom mirror in a rented black suit that fit a little too snug around the shoulders, he felt like a fraud. He ran a hand through his hair, then turned as Juliet stepped into the room. Wow, she whispered. She wore a deep blue dress with a satin ribbon tied at the waist and a pair of silver ballet flats. Juliana had sent it over with a handwritten note that simply read, "Every princess deserves a gown." Victor crouched, adjusting the hem of her dress. You look like royalty, kid, she beamed. You look like a secret agent. He laughed, but his stomach twisted. He'd never set foot in a ballroom. When the car arrived sleek and black with a driver in a cap, Victor hesitated for a full 10 seconds before opening the door. Inside, the seats were stitched with cream leather, and Juliet gasped when she saw the tablet built into the side panel. Juliana was waiting for them at the entrance to the venue, a towering museum with columns lit gold under the night sky. She wore a fitted navy gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair swept into a low twist. Victor stepped out first, then helped Juliet down carefully. Juliana's eyes lit up when they approached. "You both look incredible," she said. "Juliet, that dress was made for you." Juliet twirled once, giggling. "Thank you, I feel like a movie star." Juliana crouched to her level. "Well, tonight you are one." Victor watched her with quiet amazement. She didn't just toss compliments, she meant them. She made people feel seen, something he wasn't used to. Inside, the room pulsed with soft music and the low hum of conversation. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceilings, and waiters in black ties circulated with trays of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres. Juliana led them toward a table near the front, nodding to people as they passed. She leaned toward Victor. "I'll handle the introductions. Just don't mention anything about changing your own oil unless you want to be offered 8 consulting jobs." He grinned despite himself. Noted. The first hour passed in a blur. Juliana made small talk with CEOs and board members, but always circled back to them, letting Juliet sit in her lap during speeches, making Victor feel less like a guest and more like he belonged. At one point, a man in a gray tux approached the table. He was older, heavyset, with a ruddy face and thick gold watch. "Juliana," he said with a stiff smile. "I didn't realize you were bringing guests." She stood, polite but cool. "Victor Maddox, this is Charles Eddington. He's on the board of one of our subsidiaries." Charles shook Victor's hand with a grip too firm. "You don't look like the usual crowd she runs with." Victor raised a brow. "Neither do you." Juliana coughed to hide a laugh. Charles flushed. "Good to meet you," Victor added, just enough edge in his voice to make the man back off. After he walked away, Juliana leaned in. "He's harmless, just outdated." Victor watched him disappear into the crowd. "He looked at me like I was a stain on your dress." "Let him look." "You're not here for them," he studied her. "Then why am I here?" She hesitated, then nodded toward the balcony. "Let's get some air." Outside, the city stretched below them, lights blinking like stars. The cool breeze lifted the edge of her gown as she turned toward him. "I've been coming to these events for over a decade," she said, "and I have never wanted anyone to come with me, until now." He leaned on the railing beside her. "Why?" "Because when I wake up in the morning, I think about what you're doing. Because when Juliet smiles at me, I forget everything else. Because you're the first person in years who hasn't tried to sell me anything." Victor stared at the skyline, heart thudding. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted. "I'm not used to being wanted for anything besides fixing someone's brakes." She touched his arm. "Then let this be new. Let it be whatever we need it to be." Inside, the music swelled again. Juliet danced with another little girl she'd met at the table, her ribbon bouncing with every spin. Victor looked at Juliana, standing there in a gown that would have scared him off a week ago. Now, all he saw was her eyes. He stepped closer. "I'm not afraid of you," he said. "I'm afraid of what this could mean." She didn't flinch. "Then let's figure it out together." And for the first time, he didn't feel like he was walking into a world where he didn't belong. He felt like he was being invited to build a new one. The doorbell rang 30 minutes earlier than expected. Victor dried his hands on a dish towel and opened the front door to find Juliana standing on his porch with a paper bag tucked under one arm and a canvas tote in the other. Her coat was open, revealing a soft burgundy sweater and jeans that looked far too tailored to have ever seen a clearance rack. "I brought dinner," she said, lifting the bag. "And a movie Juliet might like. I figured you wouldn't mind surprise guests." He blinked. "You drove yourself out here again." "I don't melt in traffic." Juliet's voice floated down the hallway. "Is that her?" Victor stepped aside, still processing. "Come in." Juliana entered without hesitation, setting the bags on the kitchen counter like she'd done it 100 times. Juliet raced from her bedroom, her socks sliding on the floor. "You're early," she said, hugging Juliana's waist. "I couldn't wait. I found something called marshmallow pasta, don't ask, and I thought of you." Victor raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a stomachache waiting to happen." Juliana grinned. "Maybe. But she's only this age once." Victor took the bags and began unloading containers of handmade ravioli, garlic knots, and a salad that had actual edible flowers sprinkled on top. "This looks like it came from that place in Midtown." "It did." He paused. "That's a 3-week wait list. I called in a favor. Besides, I figured you could use a break." Juliet was already pulling the DVD case from the tote. We're watching Princess of the Moon. That's my favorite. Victor glanced at Juliana. You called her teacher, didn't you? Juliana shrugged. I wanted to get it right. That night, after Juliet had fallen asleep curled up on the couch with her head resting on Juliana's lap, Victor sat across the living room in quiet awe. The woman who ran board meetings and sat on economic panels was now brushing hair gently from his daughter's face while credits rolled behind her. You didn't have to do any of this, he said. I know. I mean it. You didn't have to show up or plan a night around us. Or remember what movie she loved. Juliana looked up. I wanted to. Victor leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You keep saying that like this is easy. It's not easy, she said, but it's honest, and I'm tired of things that aren't. He let that hang between them. You know, the more time you spend with us, the messier it's going to get. I'm not afraid of messy. He studied her. You've lived in penthouses and walked red carpets. I live 3 blocks from a laundromat that smells like boiled socks. You're not afraid of messy yet. She didn't flinch. Then show me what messy looks like. I'm not here because I'm bored, Victor. I'm here because something about this about you feels more real than anything I've had in years. He didn't know what to say to that. Juliana gently adjusted Juliet's blanket. When I was 15, my father had chest pains during a board meeting. He ignored them, said it was stress. 2 weeks later, he collapsed in his office. He didn't make it. Victor's throat tightened. I'm sorry. He didn't get a second chance. I did. That matters. He nodded slowly. So this is about more than gratitude. It stopped being about gratitude the moment you made me laugh in that garage. Juliet stirred in her sleep, and Juliana stood, careful not to wake her. She crossed to Victor and stood in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, light, floral, completely different from the grease and soap that clung to his own skin. Don't push me away because you think I haven't thought this through, she said. I have. Victor swallowed hard. You're not scared of what people will say. They already talk. Let them. He reached up, brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. I don't know how to do this. I've never had anything like this before. Then let's learn together. The words were simple, but they hit deep. He'd spent years surviving. Now he was being offered something more. Later, after she left with a promise to call in the morning, Victor stood in the doorway and watched her car disappear down the street. He didn't go back inside right away. He needed a minute to believe this was really happening. Across the hall, Juliet stirred and mumbled something in her sleep. He walked over, lifted her gently, and carried her to bed. As he tucked the blanket around her, she opened her eyes for a moment. She's like a wish, she whispered. Victor ran a hand over her hair. Yeah, baby. She kind of is. But even wishes came with consequences, and he had a feeling those were just around the corner. Victor stood at the edge of the marble staircase, stiff in a charcoal gray suit he didn't remember agreeing to wear. The ballroom below shimmered with candlelight, and a string quartet played something soft and haunting, just below the hum of conversation. The annual Blake Foundation Gala was halfway through, and already he'd shaken more hands than he had in the last 5 years. Juliet was in the care of Juliana's executive assistant, who had taken her for the evening to a nearby children's museum event tailored for VIP families. Juliana appeared at his side, her hand resting lightly on his arm. I was worried you'd disappear. I thought about it, Victor admitted, scanning the room, but there's no fire escape. Juliana's gaze followed his. Not your scene. Not even close. She exhaled slowly, her fingers curling more firmly around his arm. Something's wrong. I got a call this morning, he said, watching a waiter refill champagne flutes. The landlord wants to sell the building, no new lease, and no one's buying a mechanic's shop with 1 week's notice. Juliana turned toward him, her face unreadable. You should have told me. I don't want handouts. I didn't offer one. Victor stepped back, shaking his head. You didn't need to. You're used to solving problems by writing checks. I'm not. I'm used to solving problems with the tools I have, she corrected. Just like you are. The only difference is mine come with embossed letterheads. He looked away, jaw tight. I came here tonight because you asked me to, but I can't pretend like this doesn't feel like I'm tagging along in someone else's life. You're not tagging along, she said. You're standing beside me. He didn't answer. The music shifted and the crowd began to drift toward the dance floor. Juliana glanced toward the open space, then back at him. I know how this looks, she said, but I didn't bring you here to parade you around or prove a point. I brought you because I wanted you here. I don't care what they think, Victor said. It's not about them. It's about when this ends, when the party's over and you go back to your world and I go back to mine. She stepped in close, her voice low. If that's what you believe, then you don't know me like I thought you did. He met her eyes, but his chest ached. I'm not afraid of hard, she said. I'm afraid of giving up on something that feels right. Before he could respond, a man in a tailored midnight blue tux approached. Juliana, he said with a practiced smile. They're ready for you, she nodded, her expression tightening. I'll be right there. The man gave Victor a once-over before disappearing into the crowd. Victor exhaled. I didn't mean to pick a fight. I didn't ask you here for peace and quiet, she said. Stay. He hesitated. She stepped away, leaving him in the shadow of the staircase. An hour later, he stood on the balcony alone, the sounds of the gala muted behind glass. The skyline stretched beyond the railing, cold and endless. He'd made it this far, but it felt like standing on the edge of a different life with no idea if he could leap. The door opened behind him. I thought I'd find you here, Juliana said, arms wrapped around herself against the chill. I needed air, she joined him at the railing. I grew up in rooms like this. My mother taught me how to pick the right fork and smile without blinking, but I never learned how to know when someone truly cared. He glanced at her. You think I don't care, I think you're scared, she said. And I think if you walk away now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Victor swallowed. I've already lost enough. Then stop running from something that wants to stay. He turned toward her fully. You're not scared, not even a little, her voice was steady. I was terrified the night I collapsed. Everything I built could have ended in a heartbeat. But what scared me more was dying alone, with no one beside me who knew the real version of me, not the press release, not the stockholder, but the woman who likes takeout and bad reality TV. He let silence settle between them. This isn't about money or image, she said. It's about whether we trust each other enough to try. Victor stepped forward, close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. I trust you. That's not the problem. Then what is? I don't know how to stop expecting this to disappear. Juliana reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. She handed it to him. He opened it slowly. It was a deed transfer, with his name on it. The shop, he said, stunned. I bought the building this morning. You'll pay $1 a year, no strings. He looked up, heart racing. Why? Because I believe in what you're building, and because I want a life with you that doesn't require you to lose yourself to have me. He stared at the paper, then at her. For once, she said softly, let someone catch you. Victor didn't speak. He stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. The city blurred behind them. Later, when the gala ended and the cars rolled away, they stood on the sidewalk together, Juliet asleep in the backseat of the black town car. Come home with us, he said quietly. Juliana's eyes filled, but she nodded. Yes. And in that moment, nothing else mattered, not the world they came from, not the differences, not the fears. Only the truth that had grown between them. She hadn't just fallen for him, she'd chosen him, and he was finally ready to choose her back. Victor adjusted his grip on the bouquet of golden peonies, unsure if they were too much. Juliet had insisted he bring flowers, and after 30 minutes of browsing the florist's cooler, she'd pointed at the brightest ones with a firm nod. They look like sunshine. Give her sunshine. Now, standing in the private lobby of Blake Tower's top floor, the nerve center of Juliana's empire, he suddenly felt like a mechanic bringing a wrench to a surgery. A receptionist offered him a gracious smile and gestured toward the elevator without asking for his name. The ride was silent, save for the soft jazz piping through hidden speakers. When the doors opened, Juliana was already waiting. She wore a crisp white blouse tucked into slate gray trousers, and her hair was pulled into a low ponytail that somehow made her look even more powerful. You brought sunshine, she said, eyeing the bouquet with amusement. Juliet's idea, Victor replied, stepping out. She said you needed something that didn't come with a stock report. Juliana tilted her head. She's not wrong. He handed her the flowers. I missed you. She looked at him, eyes softening. It's been 2 days. That's too many. She didn't speak for a moment, Then she reached for his hand and guided him toward a glass-walled conference room where the skyline stretched behind her desk like a painting. But instead of sitting at the head, she perched on the edge and patted the spot beside her. "I want to talk to you about something," she said as he dropped into the chair. "Sounds serious." "It is," she said. "But not in the way you think." She reached into a folder and pulled out a document, sliding it toward him. "I had my legal team draft something. It's a proposal." Victor raised a brow. "You're giving me a job. I'm offering you a partnership." He looked down at the document. It bore the name of a new company, Maddox and Blake, followed by a mission statement about community development and restoring inner-city infrastructure. "You're serious." "I want to invest in more than just your garage," she said. "You have ideas, Victor. You've talked about building training programs, mentoring kids who come from where you came from. I can help you do that, not as a charity, as a legacy." He stared at her, overwhelmed. "You're tying your name to mine, because I believe in yours." He ran a hand through his hair. "You trust me with this much. I trust you with everything," she said. "This is just paper." He set the folder aside and turned to face her. "I never asked for any of this." "I know," she said. "That's exactly why I want you to have it." He reached for her hand. "I didn't grow up thinking I deserved a seat at a table like this." "Then let's build our own table." The words settled deep in his chest. "You're incredible, Juliana," she smiled. "Tell me something I don't know." He laughed, then leaned in and kissed her, gently at first, then with more certainty. She melted into him, her fingers threading through his hair, the city humming quietly behind them. Later that week, Juliet sat on the floor of Juliana's penthouse, piecing together a puzzle of a waterfall while Victor made grilled cheese at the kitchen island his specialty, by request. Juliana leaned against the marble counter, watching the two of them like she was memorizing the moment. "You're really settling into this domestic thing," she said. "I like it," he replied. "Even if your stove costs more than my truck," she laughed. "I'm glad you said yes. I didn't know I needed a whole new life until you offered one." "I didn't offer it," she corrected. "I asked you to build it with me." That night, as Juliet drifted to sleep in the guest room they now called hers, Victor and Juliana sat on the balcony with mugs of tea and a blanket wrapped around them. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous," she nudged him. "I want to step back from the board, not completely, just enough to breathe. I've done everything they said I had to do. Now I want to do what I actually want." He turned to her. "What do you want, Juliana?" She looked at him, no hesitation. "You, Juliet, late dinners and early mornings. A life that doesn't feel like I'm constantly running." He pulled her closer. "Then that's exactly what we'll have." A month later, the grand opening of Maddox and Blake's community center drew a crowd that wrapped around the block. Reporters snapped photos of the ribbon cutting, but Victor barely noticed. He was too busy watching Juliet show off the new reading corner to a group of wide-eyed kids, and Juliana handing out hot cocoa like she'd been doing it her whole life. After the ceremony, as the crowd thinned and the sky turned pink with sunset, Victor pulled Juliana aside. "There's one thing I haven't said yet," he said. She arched a brow. "Only one." He took her hands. "You're the bravest person I know, not because you run companies or speak at galas. Because you saw me, you saw Juliet, and you didn't flinch." Her eyes shimmered. "I didn't know what love looked like until you walked into my life," he said. "And now I can't see my life without you." She stepped forward. "Then don't." He kissed her there, in the middle of the new lobby, surrounded by the future they had built together. That night, back at their home, a place they'd chosen together, with a backyard big enough for Juliet to chase fireflies, Victor tucked his daughter in and kissed her forehead. "Happy?" he whispered. She nodded, half asleep. "She's our wish." He turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, where Juliana waited in the doorway of their bedroom, barefoot and smiling. They didn't need fancy galas or skyscrapers to prove anything now. They had each other. And that was everything.